I am Chelsea. A few weeks ago, my father, who had been battling illness, passed away. Regret filled me as I wished I could have shown him his grandchildren. The words escaped my lips along with a sigh. I got married 5 years ago, at the age of 25. At my wedding, my father and I made a promise. I'll let you know first when I get pregnant. However, that promise remained unfulfilled, and it became my only regret about my father. His illness was discovered a year ago, and since then, I did everything I could for him. I regularly returned to my parents' home, visited the hospital with my mother, and increased the frequency of phone calls and video chats. Despite my efforts, I couldn't help but wonder if I could have done more. As I muttered these thoughts, my mother, sitting next to me, reassured me, saying, "You did well, Chelsea. Your father would be satisfied." Just then, my sister Portia returned, bringing the lawyer with her. My sister entered the living room, accompanied by a man in his mid-40s, whom I assumed was the lawyer. He handed me his business card, introducing himself as Samuel, the attorney. Gratefully, I acknowledged his presence, and my mother guided him to his seat. As soon as the lawyer sat down, my sister blurted out, "I heard from this lawyer that Dad left quite an inheritance." I quickly clarified, "It's not all for you, Portia." An uneasy tension filled the room as my sister glared at me, revealing our strained relationship. We used to be okay, but things soured when we found out about Dad's illness. Despite my attempts to bridge the gap, my sister's arrogant attitude and reluctance to visit our father only worsened our relationship. I expressed my frustration, but she insisted, "I'm not being stubborn. I live in the city, and it's not easy to come to the countryside." Our argument continued, and I realized that our relationship had deteriorated quickly. Even though she lived far away, I believed she could have visited once in a while. In the end, she stopped talking, and the tension hung in the air. Attempting to diffuse the situation, the lawyer intervened, saying, "Let's calm down, please." I apologized, and the lawyer nodded before continuing. "As I mentioned on the phone, I have your father's will." My mother inquired, "When did this happen?" The lawyer replied, "A few weeks before he passed away. He contacted me, so I went to the hospital to have him sign the will in front of me, with his primary physician present." It turned out they had arranged for the primary physician to contact the lawyer. After my father passed away, the lawyer was contacted. He, in turn, reached out to us, explaining the circumstances. "That's how we find ourselves here today," the lawyer said, producing a white envelope and placing it in front of us. Inspecting the envelope, I mumbled, "This is definitely Dad's handwriting." My sister Portia seemed impatient, saying, "Never mind, just tell us what's in it. I'm busy, you know." The lawyer, with a wry smile, opened the envelope to reveal a single piece of paper. "This is what was written there," he began, explaining that besides the house and land, our father's inheritance included some savings and a storage shed. The mention of the storage shed puzzled me. My sister, however, interrupted angrily. "Wait a minute. You didn't mention the farm." "The farm, yes," I added, recalling that it was a hobby my father took up after closing his company. He had started farming near our home until he fell ill. My sister insisted that the farm should be part of the inheritance. Reviewing the documents, the lawyer found a note and revealed, "The farm is rented land." Disappointed, my sister thought we owned it, but I silently considered it might be for the best since we knew little about farming. The conversation shifted to dividing the inheritance. "The house and land go to the wife," the lawyer declared. My sister was content, but the lawyer suggested dividing the rest as we pleased. My sister promptly claimed the cash from the savings, approximately $100,000. Protesting against this selfish arrangement, I objected. "Wait a minute. I'm the oldest daughter. That's irrelevant. I'll take the storage shed." My sister turned to the lawyer, asking, "What even is that?" The lawyer explained, "It's the storage shed next to the house. You'll inherit the building, the land, and its contents." My sister's eyes lit up, and she eagerly accepted. As I questioned her motives, the lawyer continued, "It's about 65 square feet, roughly the size of a small bedroom. Reacting with distaste, my sister grimaced as the lawyer placed photos of the shed on the table. The exterior looked run down, and the interior contained only basic tools, nothing valuable. My sister declared, "I don't want it." I took the photos and painted them myself. It was all quite ordinary. Though these are sentimental items, they won't fetch much money, I thought. As I pondered, my sister spoke up, saying, "Fine, I'll take the cash. You can have that dirty shed." "Hold on, that's not fair. You agreed to the vegetable farming. What are you complaining about now?" my sister retorted. It was difficult to argue against her point, but if I didn't speak up, she'd take all of Dad's inheritance. My sister pressed me, asking, "So we're good then?" Struggling to answer, my mother chimed in, "As long as Portia won't complain later, I have no objections." My sister grinned, and it seemed settled. However, feeling uneasy, I immediately objected, saying, "Well, I'm not satisfied." "Give it up. You're so greedy, aren't you?" my sister remarked, calling me a hassle. Frustrated, I insisted, "That's not it. You care more about Dad than money, right?" Her words left me speechless, realizing that family is more important than money. Before I could say more, my sister ended the conversation. In the end, my mother got the house and land. My sister received Dad's savings, and all that was left for me was the dirty shed. My sister signed a document promising not to complain about the inheritance division, laughing loudly. Full of complaints, I couldn't help but vent to my mother, asking, "Mom, why didn't you help me?" She replied, "I did help you. You decided with Portia." I argued, "That's not true. I made sure you got the shed." My mother assured me, "You might find something surprisingly good if you look closely." The next day, armed with the key from the lawyer, I headed to the shed near the field, a 10-minute walk from home. It was a rural road where no one else passed by. Upon reaching the field, which my father had rented for the past year, I opened the dusty shed with the key. As I looked around, there was nothing special inside, just tools for farming. Disappointed, I mumbled, "Maybe I should just take what's inside for now." However, upon closer inspection, I noticed that the shed felt smaller from the inside than it appeared from the outside. Puzzled, I walked around to the back and discovered another door. Gasping, I realized there was a space accessible only from the back. Excited, I thought this must be Dad's surprise. Remembering his love for surprises, I began tearing up. Rummaging through the shed, I found 2 keys hidden in the handle of a shovel. Trying one in the back door, it clicked open. Inside the cramped space, a large safe stood alone. Recognizing it from Dad's company, I hugged the safe, feeling fulfilled. Thinking that there had to be more surprises, I inserted the second key into the safe. With a slightly rusty sound, the safe opened, revealing contents that left me in disbelief. I was stunned. Inside was an unexpected inheritance. Overwhelmed with thoughts, I realized I had to tell Mom. Locking the safe, I rushed to her and, after explaining the situation, called my husband. Together, we moved the safe from my parents' house. However, a realization hit me. The contents were undoubtedly Dad's. If it's part of my inheritance, including the shed, I might have to pay inheritance tax. Better get this thoroughly checked out. The valuable contents warranted consultation with the lawyer about inheritance tax. According to the lawyer, consulting a certified public accountant was advised. A friend referred me to an accountant, and I left the complicated matters in their capable hands. A year passed in this way, and just when I thought things had settled down, my sister showed up near my home. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" I asked. "Well, I had some business at our parents' house, so I stopped by." "Something like that," my sister replied. Her behavior struck me as odd. Despite the proximity of our homes, we weren't the kind of sisters who would casually visit, especially after the tension over Dad's inheritance. Suspicion lingered as I looked at her. Acting a bit nervous, my sister asked, "Can I come in?" I agreed, but her visit was unusual. After serving coffee, she started fidgeting and finally spoke, "So, did you win the lottery or something?" I shook my head in confusion. No, I didn't. Did your husband get a bonus? I replied, I never buy lottery tickets, and my husband's bonus isn't due now. What are you talking about? Angrily, she exclaimed. What are you making fun of me for? Money, you had it, don't you? She excitedly shared a story from a few days ago when she ran into our aunt in the city. The aunt mentioned receiving a $500 gift card as a thank you for visiting Dad. My sister assumed I sent it and believed I had come into extra money. She interrogated me, insisting that I admit to a windfall. Sighing, I clarified. It was a thank you gift from the inheritance. My sister didn't like my attitude and accused me of mocking her. I explained, no, it was a genuine thank you gift, but she pressed, demanding to know where I got the money. I replied, from the inheritance, remember? So, I sent thank you gifts to relatives who had helped us. Upon hearing this, my sister frowned and remarked, all you got was that dirty shed. I nodded, confirming her statement, but then added, there was a safe inside it. That's where the real inheritance was. Perplexed, my sister questioned, a safe? Real inheritance? I carefully explained to her about the watches in the safe, all of them valuable and collected by our father as a hobby during his lifetime. However, I admitted not knowing their exact value. On the other hand, the remaining savings were about $100,000, which seemed small considering our father's background as a business owner who could retire early. This led me to believe he might have invested a significant amount in those watches. My mother, upon seeing the contents of the safe, had expressed concern about potential inheritance tax. Seeking guidance, I asked her, what should I do, Mom? After some thought, she advised, things like this always come out. You should declare it properly. Let's ask that lawyer we spoke to recently. I consulted the lawyer again, who explained that if you inherit valuables, the inheritance tax is determined by their value at that time. He also suggested that a certified public accountant could handle it for me. Following this advice, I left it to the accountant. The results revealed that the watches alone were worth at least $500,000. Faced with this valuation, I questioned, how should I pay the inheritance tax? The accountant suggested, how about keeping the ones you're emotionally attached to and selling the rest? Agreeing with the practicality of this approach, I sold some watches, used the money to pay the inheritance tax, and sent thank you gifts to the helpful relatives, the gift cards my sister had mentioned. By the way, I kept items like the pocket watch my father often wore, which held the most memories for me. I showed it to my sister while explaining the story, saying, this one isn't expensive, but it holds the most memories for me. However, my sister frowned upon hearing my story. What? You don't have any left? She asked. I replied, no, there are still some in the safe, which is at Mom's. It's too big for this house. It's the one Dad used at his company. My sister looked away, seeming deep in thought. Feeling uneasy, I anticipated her reaction, but she surprised me by standing up and saying, I'm leaving now that I know where the money came from, and left. Considering my sister's money-minded nature, I expected her to demand a share of the money from the watch sales. I was relieved she left without making a fuss. However, in my relief, I forgot the unease I had felt earlier, only to be reminded of it late that night when I received a call from my mother. Chelsea, it's urgent. Come over right away, my mother exclaimed. Alarmed, my husband and I rushed to her house, noticing something strange as we approached. The area around my parents' house was lit up in red, and as we got closer, several police cars were parked outside. What's going on? I wondered, and the reason became clear, a distressing situation unfolding at my parents' house. I navigated through the crowd, calling out to my mother, what happened, Mom? According to her, it was after 9 p.m., and feeling tired, she had already gone to bed. Shortly afterward, she heard strange noises, sounds like someone searching for something coming from beyond the door. Oh, it's a burglar, my mother instantly thought. Feeling helpless as she was alone in the house, she decided to escape through the window. Glancing back, she saw the light of a flashlight moving inside the house. confirming her suspicion of a burglar. Convinced, she ran to the neighbor's house and urgently sought help, saying, "There's a burglar." Upon hearing this, the neighbor promptly came out, and they both observed the swinging light my mother pointed at, thinking it was a burglar. They called the police, who arrived soon after. However, it turned out not to be a burglar at all. It was my sister who had sneaked into the house to rummage through the safe. Influenced by my story, neither my mother nor the neighbor knew this. When the police arrived, my sister, realizing she was in trouble, attempted to make a quick escape. In her rush, she accidentally bumped into the open door of the safe, causing it to topple over and fall onto her as she tried to flee. That's how Portia got trapped under the safe, and she was taken to the hospital by ambulance, complaining of leg pain. Stunned, I was truly dumbfounded by the turn of events. Afterward, my mother and I apologized to the police officers for the late-night disturbance. I also called my sister's husband, who expressed disbelief, exclaiming, "Wait, you're saying Portia broke into her own family home and got injured?" "Yes, that's correct," I replied, shocked and disappointed. Her husband revealed that Portia had accumulated a significant amount of debt, spending extravagantly on brand-name items. The couple had a massive fight, leading Portia to storm out, declaring she would borrow from Mom to pay it back. It turned out she had already used the $100,000 she inherited to settle some of her debts. However, still short, she came to me, seeking more money. Learning about the contents of the safe triggered her actions, resulting in this entire mess. No wonder her husband was furious. In the end, my sister, with a fractured leg, was hospitalized, and her husband started talking about divorce. Despite her protests, he brought divorce papers to the hospital, and she had no choice but to sign. Now she lies in her hospital bed, stunned by the unfolding events. I noticed a part-time job magazine next to her, suggesting she's contemplating working part-time to pay off her debts. As for me, I decided to move back to my parents' home amid all the commotion. Concerned about my mother and another significant reason, I found out I'm pregnant. After discussing it with my husband, we decided to move back home and have my mother assist us with childcare. Although I wish I could have shared the news of my pregnancy with my father while he was alive, I'm certain he would be happy for us. So, I'm looking forward to giving birth to a healthy baby.